Sometimes when I look back at my life, I feel like I am watching a long movie. A movie full of love, mistakes, tears, and lessons. This story begins when I decided to return to my dating life again. Before I met him, my past relationships were not good. Most of my previous boyfriends were hot-tempered. Some of them liked drinking too much. They were loud, careless, and irresponsible. Being with them always made me feel tired and unhappy. So when I first met him, he felt completely different. He was calm. He spoke gently. He had a sweet face and a warm smile that made people feel comfortable. When he looked at me, his eyes were soft and kind. Because of that, my heart slowly opened to him. At that time, my life was stable. I had a steady job and a regular income in Yangon. My life was simple but peaceful. I worked during the day, met friends sometimes, and lived quietly. He, however, lived a very different life. He had come from a small village in the countryside. In Yangon, he was renting a small dormitory room. His job was not stable. Sometimes he sang at wedding halls. Sometimes he sang at bars at night. If there were no performances, he had no income at all. One day, I visited his dormitory for the first time. The room was very small. There was only a thin mattress, a small fan, and a few clothes hanging on the wall. The place looked lonely and empty. When I stood there, looking around, my heart suddenly felt heavy. I felt very sorry for him. I asked him gently, "Why are you living like this? Don't your parents help you?" He smiled softly and said, "I could ask my mother for money, but I don't want to." His answer surprised me. He looked proud, even though he was struggling. That moment made me care about him even more. From that day on, I slowly began helping him. I paid for the dormitory rent. I bought food and drinks. Sometimes I brought small gifts to make his life more comfortable. At that time, I didn't think too much about it. I only felt that I wanted to help someone I loved. Days passed quietly. We spent time together talking, laughing, and sharing small moments. When he sang, I sometimes went to watch him. His voice was beautiful. When he stood under the lights, singing emotional songs, he looked like a completely different person. I felt proud of him. But relationships are never perfect. One day, we had a big argument. It started from something small, but our words became sharp and hurtful. After that fight, he suddenly disappeared. For a whole day, there was no message, no phone call, no explanation. At first, I tried to stay calm. I thought maybe he was busy or angry. But as time passed, worry slowly filled my heart. Was he eating? Was he safe? Did something happen to him? I couldn't stand it anymore. So I went to his dormitory. When I arrived, the owner told me something that shocked me. "He hasn't come back for 3 days," the owner said. My heart dropped. 3 days? Where was he? I called his phone again and again, but every time, the phone was turned off. I felt helpless and anxious. I didn't know what to do. My mind was full of terrible thoughts. In the end, I decided to stay near the dormitory. There was a small hotel nearby. I checked into a room and waited. Maybe he would return. Maybe I would see him. While waiting, I contacted his mother. I introduced myself and asked if he had gone back home. His mother sounded surprised. "No," she said. "He hasn't come back here." She also told me something else. She was not living in Yangon. It was actually her daughter, who had been living there for a long time, and sometimes helped take care of things in the city. After hearing this, my heart felt even heavier. Where could he be? Days passed slowly. Finally, I learned that he had gone to stay at a friend's house. When he returned to the dormitory later, the owner quietly told me something. "This is not the first time," he said. "He often disappears like this." Those words stayed in my mind. At that time, I was still trying to understand him. I told myself that maybe he was just confused about life. Maybe he was struggling inside. Back then, I did not know many things about him. There were also small details that made me curious. Sometimes I saw him paying extra attention to his appearance. Sometimes he stood in front of the mirror for a long time, but I didn't think too much about it. Love often makes people blind. Looking back now, I realized something important. At that time, my love for him was not only love, it was also pity. I felt sorry for his difficult life. I wanted to protect him. I wanted to help him stand up and become stronger. Because of that feeling, I decided to speak with his mother. Together, we made a decision. We sent him back to his hometown for a while, hoping that being with his family would help him find stability again. Meanwhile, I stayed in Yangon and continued working. Life became quiet again, but my heart was not peaceful. Some nights, I wondered if I had done the right thing. Some nights, I missed him more than I wanted to admit. Then, one day, his mother called me. Her voice sounded worried. "My son misses you," she said. "He is sick." When I heard that, my heart softened again. Without thinking too much, I made a decision that would change my life once more. I stopped everything and went to where he was. At that time, I still believed that love could fix everything, but I didn't know that this decision was only the beginning of a much longer and more painful story. When his mother told me that he was sick and missing me, my heart softened immediately. Even though I had tried to stay strong in Yangon, even though I told myself that I should focus only on my work, I couldn't ignore those words. So in the end, I made a decision. I left Yangon and went to his hometown. It was a quiet place in the countryside. The air was fresh, and life moved slowly there. Compared to the busy streets of Yangon, everything felt peaceful. His family welcomed me warmly. His mother was especially kind to me. She treated me like her own daughter. She often told people in the village that I was a good woman who had taken care of her son in the city. After arriving there, I started looking for work. Luckily, I found a small job not far from their house. It wasn't a big job, but it was enough for me to support myself and help the family. So I began living in his house. At first, life felt surprisingly calm. Every morning, his mother prepared breakfast. We sat together and talked about simple things. The neighbors were friendly, and the village life was peaceful. About 2 months after I arrived, something happened that made the whole family very happy. I became pregnant. When his mother heard the news, she was overjoyed. She smiled widely and told everyone, "I'm going to have a grandchild." The whole house was filled with excitement. Even he seemed happy. He was calm and gentle. For a while, he acted like a responsible man. I believed that maybe our life was finally becoming stable. But slowly, small, strange things began to happen. Sometimes at night, after everyone had gone to sleep, he would suddenly disappear. At first, I thought maybe he went outside for fresh air. But one night, I woke up and noticed he was not beside me. The house was quiet. I walked downstairs slowly, trying not to wake anyone. When I reached the living room, I saw something unexpected. He was standing in front of the mirror. The light was dim, but I could clearly see him carefully looking at his face. On the table in front of him were small bottles and creams, skincare products. He was gently applying them to his face, studying his reflection with serious attention. I stood there silently, feeling confused. I had never seen him like that before. When he noticed me, he quickly turned around. For a moment, both of us were quiet. But I didn't ask anything that night. I simply went back upstairs. In my heart, I told myself that maybe I was overthinking. Pregnancy made my emotions sensitive. Maybe it was nothing. Months later, I gave birth to our daughter. She was beautiful. When I held her in my arms for the first time, my heart was filled with love. His mother was also extremely happy. She took care of the baby with great excitement and affection. Life seemed warm again, but some things didn't change. Sometimes he still disappeared at night. Sometimes he came home very late. When I asked him where he had gone, he usually answered casually, "Just visiting friends." At that time, I loved him too much to question him deeply. Later, I noticed something else. He started taking more care of his appearance. He spent more time in front of mirrors. Sometimes I even noticed traces of makeup. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining things. But one day, I finally asked him directly. The answer he gave me hurt more than I expected. He admitted that sometimes he liked dressing differently and expressing himself in ways I didn't fully understand. Hearing that, my heart felt extremely heavy. I cried for a long time that day, not because I hated him, but because I was confused and scared about our future. Still, I loved him. And because I loved him, I tried to accept things and move forward. Eventually, his older sister also came to visit. I spoke with her and with his mother. We had a serious conversation. They gently asked him not to continue certain behaviors, especially in front of the family and the child. For a while, he seemed to listen. Life continued. I spent most of my time raising our daughter. His mother helped me a lot. She loved her granddaughter deeply and treated her like a precious treasure. But our relationship slowly became distant. The closeness we once had began to fade. Sometimes I felt like we were living in the same house, but in completely different worlds. When our first daughter became about 2 years old, something unexpected happened again. I became pregnant for the second time. This news shocked me. I was not ready. Our relationship was already unstable. Financial problems were still there. I felt overwhelmed and afraid. For a moment, I even thought about not continuing the pregnancy. I cried many nights thinking about what to do. When he found out, he promised me something. He said he would take responsibility. He said he would change. He told me not to worry and asked me to keep the baby. Because I still trusted him. Because I still loved him. I decided to believe his words. So I gave birth to our second daughter. She was small and fragile, but very beautiful. When I looked at her tiny face, I told myself that maybe this child would bring happiness to our family. But reality slowly showed something different. After the baby was born, his behavior became worse. He often went out with friends and didn't come home at night. Sometimes I waited for him until morning. When I tried to talk to him about our problems, he gave me painful answers. One day, I asked him through tears, "Don't you love your daughters? Don't you feel sorry for me?" He looked tired and frustrated. Then he said something that broke my heart. "I can't work properly because I have children," he said. "My family is not happy with my situation. I can't depend on them. I'm still trying to find my own way." Those words made me realize something very painful. The man I loved so deeply was slowly drifting farther and farther away from our family. But the story of my suffering was not finished yet, because the hardest part of my life was still waiting ahead. After my second daughter was born, life became heavier than I had ever imagined. Taking care of two young children was not easy. Every day I woke up early, fed the baby, prepared food, cleaned the house, and tried to keep everything together. Sometimes I felt like my body and my heart were both very tired. But the most painful thing was not the hard work. It was the loneliness. The man who was supposed to be my partner was slowly disappearing from our lives. He spent more and more time outside with friends. Many nights he didn't come home at all. Sometimes he returned in the morning as if nothing had happened. At first, I tried to talk to him calmly. I told him that our daughters needed their father. I told him that our family needed him. But every time I spoke, the conversation ended the same way. He avoided my eyes. Or he became irritated and said things that hurt me deeply. One night, after waiting for him until morning again, I finally asked him directly, "Did you ever love your daughters?" I asked quietly. He stayed silent. Then I asked another question. "Did you ever feel sorry for me?" For a long moment, he didn't answer. Finally, he said something that made my heart feel cold. "I can't live freely because of this family," he said. Those words cut through me like a knife. In that moment, I realized something very painful. The love I had protected for so many years might not have been real for him. After that conversation, I stopped asking questions. I stopped arguing. I simply focused on my daughters. Luckily, my mother-in-law was very kind to us. She loved her grandchildren with all her heart. She helped take care of them every day and never blamed me for the problems between her son and me. Sometimes she looked at me with sad eyes and said quietly, "You are a strong woman." But inside, I didn't feel strong. Inside, I felt broken. As the years passed, my daughters slowly grew up. My eldest daughter began walking, talking, and laughing loudly around the house. My youngest daughter followed behind her like a small shadow. Watching them grow was the only thing that brought light into my life. But my husband didn't change. He continued living the way he wanted, going out with friends, sleeping outside the house, sometimes asking me for money. Once, during a big argument, he said something cruel. "You are happy with your money," he said coldly. "Not with me." Those words shocked me. For years I had worked hard to support our family. I paid the rent, I bought food, I raised our children. And yet somehow, in his eyes, I was still the problem. After that day, something inside me slowly changed. I began to understand that love alone cannot save a relationship. Compassion alone cannot change a person. And sacrifice alone cannot build a family. I had forgiven him many times before, sometimes because I loved him, sometimes because I pitied him, sometimes because I didn't want my daughters to grow up without a father. But forgiveness has limits. One evening, while brushing my hair in front of the mirror, I suddenly noticed something. My hair had begun turning white. Not just one or two strands, there were many. I stared at my reflection for a long time. I looked older than I expected. My face carried the tiredness of many sleepless nights. And suddenly, a question appeared in my mind. How long will I live like this? That night, after putting my daughters to sleep, I sat quietly beside them and thought about my future. I realized something important. My daughters were my true responsibility. They deserved a peaceful life. They deserved a mother who was not always crying inside. From that moment, I made a quiet decision. I would continue raising my daughters with all my strength. I would endure the difficult days for them. But when they grew older, when they became strong enough to understand life, I would leave. I would start a new life. A life where I could breathe freely again. A life where my daughters and I could find happiness without constant pain. Even now, I still live under the same roof. He still lives the same way. Sometimes he laughs loudly with friends. Sometimes he ignores us completely. And sometimes I sit silently and watch everything, feeling like a stranger in my own life. But inside my heart, my decision is already made. Love is a mysterious thing. Sometimes we meet people not because they will stay forever, but because we owe each other something in this life. Maybe this relationship is a kind of debt, a debt of emotions, a debt of fate. If that is true, then I will repay it as much as I can in this lifetime. I will endure. I will continue moving forward. And one day, when the time is right, I will close this chapter of my life. Until that day comes, I pray quietly every night. I pray for my daughter's happiness. I pray for strength in my heart. And I pray that all the debts of love will finally be paid, so that one day, somewhere in the future, what do you think about this woman's decision? Should she leave and start a new life, or should she continue forgiving him? Please write your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy emotional storytelling, subscribe to Cozy English Story for more powerful life stories.